Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, the climate guy setting the record straight about climate. This video is titled, U.S. Summer Temperatures Plummet as Climate Scientists Ramp Up Their Lies. It's an incredible story of cynical fraud by people who are taking in billions of dollars of taxpayers' money. It's summer now, and even though most of the U.S. has been very cool this month, we're seeing lots of stories like this popping up in the press. The press is full of stories today about super heat waves of 131 degrees Fahrenheit coming. Well, the U.S. hasn't seen temperatures like that since 1913, when California reached 134 degrees, setting the all-time world's temperature record. That was more than 100 years ago, and CO2 was at 300 parts per million. Based on history, this story is already sounding pretty shaky. And on days when they aren't telling us that we're going to burn up and dry up, they tell us we're going to drown. Heidi Cullen's Climate Central claims that Kansas City temperatures are going to increase by about 10 degrees and end up like South Texas. But the actual temperature data from NOAA shows that summer temperatures in the Kansas City area have dropped about 4 degrees over the last 90 years. Summers in Kansas City are getting cooler, not hotter. What is Heidi Cullen talking about? During August of 1936, the Kansas City area was having an incredible drought and heat wave. They'd only received 9 inches of rain during the year so far, and they were having an incredible stretch of 100-degree days. They ended up with 59 days over 100 degrees during the summer of 1936. They also had very hot summers in 1913, 1934, 1954, 1980, and 1983. But since 1983, they've hardly had any 100-degree days at all. And in fact, in the last 5 years, they've had no 100-degree days in the Kansas City area, compared to 59 in 1936. Kansas City is getting much cooler, not much hotter. I think Heidi Cullen is lying. Okay, maybe I'm being unfair focusing on just one location, Missouri. What about for the entire state? Well, summer temperatures in Missouri have dropped about 10 degrees over the last 90 years. Remember that Heidi Cullen said they were going to increase by 10 degrees, but they've dropped by 10 degrees. What she's saying is the exact opposite of reality. This is fraud. And the frequency of 90-degree summer days in Missouri has dropped from about 60% in the 1930s to about 20% now. This is a massive decline. So maybe I'm being unfair just talking about Missouri. Well, let's expand this into looking at the region of states around Missouri. During the heat wave of August 12th to August 26, 1936, in Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Arkansas, and Indiana, afternoon temperatures averaged 100 degrees. This is just mind-blowing heat. Americans today can't comprehend that sort of weather. This area almost never gets over 100 degrees anymore, much less has 14 days in a row where they average over 100 degrees. And since the start of records in 1895, mid-August temperatures in the Midwest have plummeted. They're not going up, they're going down, and they're going down fast. The frequency of hot days in the Midwest has also plummeted since 1895. During the heat wave of August 1936, 92% of days in this region were over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This is unbelievable. Compare that to last year, which was supposed to be the hottest year ever. Less than 9% of days were over 90 degrees. There were only 1/10 as many hot days last year as there were in 1936, and last year was supposed to be the official hottest year ever. So maybe I'm just cherry-picking the Midwest. What about for the entire United States? Well, we see exactly the same pattern for the entire United States. This is for all U.S. Historical Climatology Network stations. That's the official NOAA U.S. temperature record. The heat wave of August 1936 was unprecedented. Mid-August temperatures have plummeted across the United States. And the frequency of hot days has shown exactly the same pattern across the entire country. So maybe I'm just cherry-picking mid-August temperatures. What about for the entire summer? Well, for the entire summer, the story is even worse. Average maximum temperatures in the United States have dropped about 4 degrees Fahrenheit since the 1930s, and they're continuing to go down. But this cynical fraud from Heidi Cullen gets even worse. Let me explain. Here's another map from Heidi Cullen's website. Summer sizzle, warming since 1970? Why did she pick 1970? Well, here's why she picked 1970. It's a low point. It's about the only place she could find a warming trend. Summer temperatures are plummeting in the United States. In 1936, 18% of summer days were over 100 degrees, compared to about 4% now. And now just about all of those temperatures are in the desert Southwest, in California and Arizona. But we used to see incredible summer heat and 100-degree temperatures all across the entire country. This is a map of August 14, 1936 temperatures in the United States. These red dots were over 100 degrees, the yellow dots were over 90 degrees. As you can see, almost the entire country was over 90 degrees, and the central portion of the country was over 110 degrees. See temperatures of 115 degrees in Kansas. Scientists now get hysterical about temperatures that hot in the desert Southwest, but we used to see 110, 115 degree temperatures in the Corn Belt. And climate scientists know perfectly well that this is true. Here's a paper by James Hansen, the world's #1 climate alarmist from NASA, from August 1999. Empirical evidence does not lend much support to the notion that climate is headed towards more extreme heat and drought. In this paper, Hansen discussed the incredible heat and drought of the 1930s Dust Bowl, when millions of people fled the Midwest for California. Steinbeck wrote about this in The Grapes of Wrath. And before NASA started tampering with U.S. temperature data, this was their official temperature graph. They showed that the 1930s were very hot and that U.S. temperatures plummeted. Since then, they've tampered with the data and completely reversed this. Now they show it warming. In the 2017 version of NASA's U.S. temperature graph, they've reversed the trend. They've massively cooled the 1930s, and they've massively warmed the end of the 20th century. They turned a cooling trend into a warming trend. This isn't science, this is fraud. And if this fraud isn't bad enough, 10 years ago Heidi Cullen called for any meteorologist who told the truth about climate to be decertified. This is mafia tactics, not science. The 1930s were incredibly hot and dry in the United States, and it's a crime against our country to try to erase this history. Climate scientists rely on computer models rather than actual historical data. And when the data is inconvenient, they just erase it or change it. Mark Twain said, "There is something fascinating about science. One gets such wholesale returns of conjecture out of such a trifling investment of fact." Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science for a long time.